Ani Bujo Kinawea, Nimki Kwe Dijnakas, Mississauga Dinjiba, Anishinaabe, Scottish French Nindao, Mikanak Dodam. My family comes from Matagami First Nation. Good morning. My name is Jennifer. My spirit name is Thunder Woman, and it's my honor to open this circle for us today for our gathering. I'm going to open with a song, and the song that I've chosen is a song called How Could Anyone? And this song is one that is a beloved anthem of hope and healing. It talks about the beauty of human beings, but also making peace with the past, which is a theme that we're going to be talking about today when we're talking about truth and reconciliation. And I'm going to sing it 4 times for each of the directions. Miigwetch. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How deeply you're connected to my soul. Miigwetch.
Wow, Jen, what a beautiful job you done with that song. And thank you so much for opening this session with that those beautiful words and how they so nicely fit into what we're, talking about, that truth and reconciliation and all the beauty that's been taken away. And it's time now to recoup that and to feel that and to live that. So thank you so much, Jen, for that beautiful song. Yeah. So sego se wakwego ka dine ni yong yet. Hello everyone. My name is Gail Whitlow. I'm from Six Nations of the Grand River Territory here in Ontario, Canada. I am Bear Clan and I am also Mohawk Nation. I have 5 children and 18 grandchildren. So as far as truth and reconciliation goes, oh my gosh, how that kind of encompasses so much that has gone on over the years, as far as being able to have my family And even though there's things within that, at least these days I can say, hey, I can see my grandchildren. Um, so today, when we talk about truth hurts, reconciliation heals, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. When I mean, a long way to go, I just have to reflect, and I'm sure everyone who lives within any community can reflect on what's going on around us. We are, in the midst of major chaos on so many levels. Levels such as, of course, addiction and suicide and, all of those other traumas, but just life in general right now. And we are living, the beautiful thing is we are living the prophecy. The prophecy talks about now and how we have to go through this change in order to be the people we need to be for our 7 generations coming. Our 7 generations coming, they depend on us, they need us, they are calling us, and it's time to, end some of that trauma in our DNA. Right now, we as human beings have the ability or the I guess the job to let it be taken away from our DNA so that our children aren't affected and our grandchildren, our grandchildren, our grandchildren. And on so many levels, I've seen so many beautiful things, but I'm still part of that hurt and pain as I check every day. And we here at Six Nations, we just keep losing people left and right and left and right. And nobody really has a chance to get over one trauma because it's just another trauma following. So either we become numb to that trauma or we say, hey, what is going on here and how do we help to solve what we need to do? So on the healing journey, we have to always begin within. We have to remember that we have a soul purpose, and that soul purpose is to understand darkness. The first thing we have to do is we have to understand that darkness, because when we understand that darkness, we can bring the light. So when we're young and when we're going through it all, that darkness, that darkness, that darkness, our duty then is to shift that darkness and to find a place. So one of the things that contribute to our darkness a lot of times is what's going on around us as far as our community. What do we do to improve our community? What do we do to improve our family? What do we do to improve our friends? And sometimes it's just taking that first step in one direction, and sometimes you get beaten like no other, but through that beating you come out, and you come out standing, and you're able to shrug that off, and you're saying, ah, I needed that, and I understand that. I went through that because there's a bigger path and a bigger lesson. So one of the speakers that will be coming on next, Dennis Windigo, he has trauma-based teachings that we have been presenting to different communities. And each time that I have been able to, be part of this work, I'm just amazed because each time, it's kind of like you go to Longhouse or you go to your ceremonies, and the first time it's like, oh, it's just a ceremony. And then the second time it's like, oh, I didn't know that from last time. And oh, I didn't know that, And so each time you go, you pick up a little bit more and a little bit more. So each time that you listen, and I think that's why we were in what we might call an oral tradition, because that way we were able to absorb and it will sink in, and we were able to filter it through instead of, writing it down and then forgetting about it. So being part of an oral collective of teachings and healing has been really powerful in that now we can work collectively with lots and lots and lots of people from everywhere around the globe. And it's around the globe that we have to concentrate. We have to concentrate on sharing and learning because the globe is here. And if we don't start to learn and we don't start to share with our fellow Canadians or Americans or fellow, I don't even know. I mean, there's so many ways to classify, but our settlers, our settler people, if we don't learn to find a way to work collectively, then we're losing out as well. So always embrace, let's share, let's care, let's be the change that we want to be. And through that change, we find this beauty. So deep within, we have this beauty. And it's like, I liken it to a candle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just light this smudge. And what I'm asking is that as I light this smudge, that you close your eyes and you imagine that you are partaking in this smudge, and then send it off to your children, to your workers, to your families, whoever may be in need of a smudge right now, in a collective way. So just kind of close your eyes and just kind of like, and as we work with this medicine, the medicine works with us, because one of the important things to know is that we are the medicine, and we always have been the medicine, and we always will be the medicine. And so that means that we have a respect, and that means that we have a a plan, and that means that we also have a way of knowing. And so this medicine represents one of those ways of knowing, where we feel the medicine, we allow the medicine to work with us, and then we share the medicine. So that's what we've done this morning. We've used that medicine to help in a little way that we can, to send it out to you and to your communities and to your relatives, so that we may be able to share that, just the beginning of that sharing process, where we start to connect on a deeper level. So being Haudenosaunee, being part of the Six Nations of the Grand River has been the greatest journey of my life. I remember when I was young, I took off to, like, a lot of different territories, and and at the time, I didn't realize how important it was to do that, how it enhanced and improved the life that I have now, and how I learned so much more than just what I would have learned had I just stayed within my community. So I think that added an extra layer of, I would call it, vibrational energy. Vibrational energy is that love, it's that caring. So one of the teachings that are important is that, if we look at the color pink, pink is that color of unconditional love, healing, the heart. And so, if we can imagine that beautiful pink color surrounding us and surrounding that community, that beautiful vibration of that color helps us to heal without us having to pay $90 to that therapist, $90 to whoever it is helping you. That beautiful pink color starts the process of helping our mind to relax, helping our body to relax, helping us to relax in such a beautiful way. As we move forward, to that truth hurts, reconciliation heals, the truths have come out. And in Milton, we planted this beautiful garden. And just before, the garden was, well, I guess just as the garden was completed, there was the discovery of the 215 original children. And even though we have always known that, that started and that triggered something so beautiful. What it did was, that day, we put a call out, and next thing you know, we had 250 sets of shoes to place in our garden. So as we walked towards the garden, I can remember that feeling of heaviness. I can remember feeling that pain. I can remember feeling the sorrow. But I had my pipe, and I started to uh, pray with my pipe, and all of a sudden the children had this beautiful message. It was so beautiful, and I'll never forget it. As I was burning the pipe, they says, we are fine, we are happy, and now it's time for you to be happy as well. What we need you to do is, you need to dance with us. And as they said that, they were spiraled up to the stars and they were just so happy and they were singing and they were singing, they were singing, they were singing. So after this ceremony, when I was able to share, what I had witnessed, um, it was so beautiful. So we ended up doing that. We put together, a day where we danced with the children, and I think something vibrationally powerful transformed, I think, at that time when we were all singing and we were dancing and we were praying with those children, because they were so happy, they were vibrant, they were full of life. And the beautiful part about, well, if there's a beautiful part, they the way I understand it is what they did was they sacrificed themselves so that this would happen for us today. So it's kind of like those that have gone through this, this thing called residential school doesn't only affect our communities here on Turtle Island, it affects communities worldwide. As you travel through the different nations worldwide, you find that this trauma is everywhere and it's just as painful today as it was 5,000 years ago, when they first started undergoing this process of colonization. And so that made me understand that collectively we have a bigger mission. Not only do we have to heal ourselves and our community, we have to look at it as a collective healing, a world journey towards peace. And that world journey towards peace, again, begins with just having that knowledge or that understanding that peace is possible. And and when we look at peace, we think, well, what is peace? What exactly is peace? Because peace, again, is this beautiful feeling, this beautiful connection. So I see that I have my friend and Dennis and Jody online. So thank you everyone for listening to this point, and now I'll turn it over to Miss Jody.
Mm, Good morning. Thank you, Gail and Jen, for your beautiful words. And we were in the back room listening to the opening and receiving the medicine and preparing ourselves. Um, Good morning. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. This has been an emotional day for me already. I'm in Winnipeg at the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation, and there's a beautiful sacred fire out front, and they're just getting ready to stream live from Ottawa. So you can definitely watch that if you'd like to tune out for a bit. But this will be replayed on our YouTube channel. We'll be sharing it in social media and having it for 24 hours available for those of you to watch and share if you'd like. It's a real honor to be in this circle with all of you, and not just the four on the screen here, but for the collective of people that have been with us on this journey of healing and supporting, this time. And Dennis and the grandmas for really putting yourself out there, sharing your knowledge in a way that is making an impact and can make an impact in leading us to self-care again, and knowing that we have to take care of ourselves to take care of others in this time. So it's an honor to work with Dennis Windigo. It's not even work. It's, being in relationship, fully committed to knowing that we're in a really beautiful time together. And I'm honored to introduce you, Dennis, and be a part of your program and bringing, everything to the forefront, this knowledge that's within us, our knowledge of, connecting to the land, and just knowing that we are medicine is helping us understand how to honor ourselves and honor the children and remember, and moving forward. So Nyawa for being here. Dennis, thank you. Take it away.
Maho. Miigwetch. Zongoi benes dijnikas, biju dotem, nigaguntsmenikaning donji. My name is Dennis Windigo. I'm a member of the Lynx clan, and that follows our traditional ways of identifying our societies. So we have the clan system, the powerful clan system, and I'm a Lynx clan. And I'm also from the Nigigunsaminikaning in northwestern Ontario, or in the Treaty 3 territory. And I am honored to be here, and thank you everyone for allowing me to join you here in this very important day, this very day where we can acknowledge and honor those children who haven't made it home. And every child matters. And it's a great day to honor those children. And their voices come through us and the messages that we have to share with the world. So I say Miigwetch for sharing this very sacred space with me, and I welcome everyone into our sacred circle, into our sacred lodge, into this sacred online forum. Because this online forum, this technology is also spiritual, because it's reaching an audience far, far away. And I hope that it can resonate, it can touch something inside of you. So I want to talk about that circle. And that circle is whole and it's complete. That circle is our spirit. And before we arrive into this world, our spirits were whole and complete. They were spiritually fully developed. And science has a way of catching up to spirituality to describe those spiritual things that are already known to humankind. And science uses an evidence-based approach that is based on their data and their knowledge and how that is put together to make sense of it. And I truly believe that spirituality and science move in very similar directions, but maybe they have a different kind of energy. When I think about our spirits and our beings, I think about that circle. When I think about colonialism and contact, I think about the drum. The drum. I want you to notice what happens inside of you. I want you to notice inside your body where you get the sense of this, where you get the sensations in your body. I want you to notice that. Since time immemorial, our people have been a strong nation, strong spiritually, emotionally, physically, mentally, strong in every way. They had their societies, they had their ceremonies, they had their ways of healing, their ways of raising their children, and how the children were put in the center of that circle, and they were honored, they were revered. Adults could learn from children, as well as children learning from the adults. The children were protected, and the heartbeat of our nation was strong, like this drum, very strong. And there's this date in which we know as contact, 1492. our spirits, our ways were very strong, were very powerful. They were so powerful. The new people who came to the land wanted to learn, wanted to know why people here were so strong, were so powerful, were so resilient, and very connected to all of life, to one another, to all living things, the elements, the trees, the water, the air, the sun, the moon, the whole universe. And shortly after contact, the relationship shifted. The relationship changed from sharing, from transferring knowledge and wisdom to one of ownership. And our people had a great population in the millions on Turtle Island. And what followed were mass murders. Our people were being exterminated, which some of the history books regard as policies of on indigenous peoples based on extermination. So our ancestors were removed, were killed off by the millions. And as indigenous people seen the pain and the suffering and the grief of that kind of loss, of that massive loss, they used the people that were causing the harm. They used this word called susto to describe what happens when people see a great suffering and live that great suffering. They called it susto, which was the word that can be translated today to what we know as trauma. And pretty soon, the heartbeat of the nation of indigenous people grew weaker and weaker. Soon there was a dependency. Soon our nations were divided and conquered. Soon our ways were outlawed. Soon our tools were confiscated, were stolen, and put into museums, taken to foreign lands. Our heartbeat, our spirit grew weaker. And by the time of Confederation in Canada, our numbers had greatly dwindled, became smaller. And so a new process began, the process of assimilation. In that process of assimilation, shortly after Confederation, the residential school system was enacted, was put into place, and our children were removed, sometimes forcibly, from their communities. And the heartbeat of the land, the heartbeat of the nation, grew weaker and weaker. And it was the period of darkness, the period of being lost, period of unresolved trauma, and the trauma that people faced, children faced in the residential school system. Today, I feel honored that I can carry a feather, that I can hold this without fear of being prosecuted, being removed, being told that it's no good. Today I can hold it with pride, with safety, and to know who I am, to know my history and the history of my people. And I ask you to join me today on this little journey we're going to go on this journey of truth, of reconciliation. And reconciliation is for everyone, not only for Indigenous people, and not only for people in Canada. To me, reconciliation is a worldwide issue, and colonialism is a worldwide issue because many countries have been colonized. Many countries continue to go through that. We just have to look around the globe, look in the news, and we hear stories. We see the evidence of that. And I honor those survivors, those who are now adults, who were children that were taken out of their lands, removed from their parents, removed from their familiar territories, their communities, their way of life, and placed in an institution, sometimes for a year, sometimes for many years. Sometimes children would stay there even during the summer holidays. Some students would go home. Every child had a different experience in the school system. Sometimes children benefited, and many didn't. Many children experienced all forms of abuse, all kinds of trauma, and that trauma was brought home with them. And it grew into their adulthood as they grew and they developed. But way deep inside is that resiliency, is that connection to wholeness of spirit, that connection. And those teachings are the teachings that sustain us, that hold us together, that help us to be resilient, to move through whatever we need to move through in terms of the trauma that we may be experiencing in our lives. And the tools that we learn as former students of the residential school system, we must teach that to our children, to our grandchildren, to our great-grandchildren. Today, I'm very proud to say that I am a father, I am a grandfather, I'm also a great-grandfather. And I say that with the greatest of pride, because there was a time where I thought I would never become an adult, and I didn't want to become an adult because I thought life is too painful. And for many survivors, that may be how they feel. And those feelings come up again and again. For example, in May of 2021, when the shocking news came out that there were 215 unmarked graves of children at the site of a former residential school in BC, it triggered memories. It triggered those experiences that many former students have gone through. It triggered the next generation. It also triggered the world. There's a ripple effect. A ripple effect. So when you throw a little stone in that calm water, there's going to be ripples. And that ripple effect is the different layers of trauma that is experienced individually, family, extended family, community, extended community, nation, globally. And that ripple effect, when the news came out, forced people to look at this, to talk about it. So when the news of that, those voices from the land were saying, You need to reconcile this. You need to talk about this. You need to heal from this. And you need to look to the land for that healing. You need to look to your culture, to your ceremonies for that healing and for that medicine. And that's what we've been doing long before that. But that news of the unmarked graves reinforced that. But it also told us there is more work to be done. There is more work that we have to do. There is more healing we have to do. And it's not only for Indigenous people, but for all people, because colonialism is a worldwide issue. And the issues of the past have a way of coming up in the present. And that's when we need to do something to take care of ourselves. And we are still whole. We are still complete, like that circle that's whole and complete. Trauma infiltrates. Trauma gets into the body. Trauma makes its way into our sensory, into our blood, into our cells, into our bones, into our muscles, into our skin, into our every way that it could enter into our body. It's not only about what we think, what we feel, what we see. It is much more than that. We have so many ways to register what we have experienced, to register what we have learned from our past, from our histories, and how we carry that. We have many ways in how that trauma has been passed down from one generation to the next. When we think about that passing of trauma from one generation to the next, we speak about intergenerational trauma and how it is unintentionally passed from one generation to the next. And we need to talk about those things. We need to do our healing around those things. And it was told through prophecies of our people, through our creation stories, through our legends, through our ceremonies of this time of reconciliation. Because reconciliation involves all nations, not only the Indigenous nation, but all nations. And it brings me to a story that was shared by elders for many, many generations. And the story is of the earth and the Creator. Creator was not satisfied with the way things were going on earth. Things were not working together. Human beings were harming one another. Human beings were disrespectful, were discriminatory. They were creating a lot of chaos. So Creator decided that he's going to take away the earth. He's going to remove the earth, eliminate the earth. And all the nations on this planet that we call Earth, which is a part of the solar system, were worried and they were concerned that they would be losing the earth, that they would be losing their way of life. And so they came together, and all these nations, the tree nations, the animal nations, the fish nations, the plant nations, the medicines, the fires, the air, the human beings, the turtles, all these nations came together with their concerns, and they gathered to express that what their fears were, and that they wanted to keep the earth, that they wanted to sustain life. But what do they have to do? What do they have to change? So they decided we need to have a meeting with the Creator. There needs to be a great connection, that great spiritual connection. And so the eagle said, I will take that message, whatever message you want me to deliver to the Creator, and I will start to fly. And so all the nations, all the planets, all the plants, all the humans, all the elements got together and said, this is what you need to tell the Creator. And that eagle started to fly in that circle. He flew in that circle, just like you see the eagle flying in a circle whenever you have ceremonies, whenever you have gatherings for healing. You'll see that eagle up in the sky as he's circling. And each circle, he goes a little higher, and he's going higher and higher and higher. And pretty soon he disappears and he enters a new atmosphere. And when he enters that new atmosphere, he turns into this great big thunderbird. His wingspan is huge. There's lightning that comes out of his eyes. There's thunder that rolls across the skies. And so all nations know he had entered a new atmosphere, and he is now the thunderbird. And they could hear the thunder. They could see the lightning as it's flashing across the sky. And so while they see this, they witness this, they are told to offer the first medicine that was given by Creator, to honor that journey, to honor that message. Sema, tobacco. So you offer your tobacco whenever you hear that thunder, whenever you see that lightning, not to be afraid of that, but to know that there is a connection between all living nations, all nations here on the planet Earth, and Creator, to honor that connection, that spiritual connection that we all have. And so everyone offered their tobacco using the first plant, Sema. So when we are having troubles, when we are having worries, we often take a pinch of tobacco and we offer that to an elder. So the elder can listen to our concerns and can help us understand what's going on inside of us and what we need to do to help ourselves feel better, to live Bimatezewan, the good life. And so that thunderbird kept going, and finally he reached his destination. He was now sitting with the Creator. And he told the Creator all the concerns. And the Creator gave him one message. And that message is that all nations need to work together. We are all equal in the eyes of the Creator. We all have gifts in the eyes of the Creator. No one is better. No one is more powerful. We are all equal in the eyes of the Creator. We all have different gifts that can help everyone. And we must walk with those gifts in humility, in sharing, and in order to sustain life, to hold life, to move forward. So the Thunderbird understood the message, and he started his journey back to Earth. And once again, the skies lit up with the lightning. The skies made the sound of that roaring thunder. And all nations that were here on Earth knew that the eagle was going to come back. He was making his journey back. They could hear the Thunderbird. And pretty soon it stopped. And it stopped because that Thunderbird broke through and came back to the Earth's atmosphere. And he turned back into that eagle. And then when he got here, he had a meeting with all nations and said, we have to work together. We have to walk in humility. We have to honor our gifts and our purpose why we are here. We all have a right to be here. We all have gifts that we can contribute to the healing and to the wellness of this planet and of all nations. That was his message. And so with the people from back in my territory, we always honor that sky, that circle that we call the hole in the sky. And I think science calls it the Orion, the Orions, the holes in the sky. And it was through that hole in the sky, Creator put Anishinaabe in through that hole in the sky. You see that hole in the sky when you sit in a teepee and you look up and you see that opening at the top of the teepee, that hole in the sky. That is where Creator lowered us from and put us on this land that we call Turtle Island, that is now North America, that comprises of United States of America and Canada. Turtle Island. If you ever get a chance to look at the shell at the back of that turtle, you will see the little squares, the different squares. And all those little squares, all those separate squares represents each nation. Indigenous people are not all the same. We all have different backgrounds. Human beings are not all the same. We have different cultures, different languages, different ways of living and raising our children, different ways of doing things. And we all belong on that great shell of that turtle. And that's what the Creator meant. We have to walk together, work together. So the world was lost when those policies, the residential school policies, came into effect to remove children from their homes, from their parents, from their families, from their culture, from their language, and to place them in residential school. Many children went home, but there were a lot of children who never returned home. Children died in the schools, and parents were not informed. Those are truths that we have to reconcile, not only for Indigenous people, but for all people, to acknowledge that, because every child does matter. And I want you to think about that, to really think about that. If you have a child right now, whether it's your child, whether it's your grandchild, whether it's your great-grandchild, and you look at the age they are, look at the age they are right now, what would happen inside of you? What would happen in your thinking? What would happen in your way of life? What would happen in your behaviors if someone came to your door and forcibly removed that child without cause, without reason? They're living in a loving home. They're living in a supportive environment where they know their language, they know their culture, they know their family, and they were removed from there. And all of that begins the process of erasing language, culture, ceremony, any family connection. What would that do to you inside if that happened to you? What would that do? There's a saying, do not judge people until you have walked a mile in their moccasins. And sometimes we have to walk that mile in other people's moccasins to understand their point of view, to understand their belief systems, to understand what they are talking about. And so we must put ourselves in those shoes of those many parents, grandparents, great-grandparents who lost their loved ones to residential school, lost their children to the residential school system. And the impact of that loss, the impact of the abuse that they experienced in residential school. So today is a day of reflecting and to know that we need healing. All nations need healing. All nations. And when I look at that circle, and that circle, that trauma gets into that circle through many means, through many ways. It gets into that circle. It disrupts our lives. It disrupts our way of thinking. It shuts down and disrupts our emotional way of expression. It even changes the way we walk, the way we hold our bodies, the way we look at the world, and the way that we interact in this world. Many people who have gone through whatever kind of trauma may feel disconnected. They may feel they're damaged, they're hurt. There's no way to recover. But when we make those connections inside where the trauma gets into the body has a beautiful way of healing itself. The body has its own natural elements. Before we were born into this world and when we were in our mother's womb, we lived and we existed in water. We sat in that water. So water is a life-giving force. And as human beings today, our bodies are made up of water. So water continues to sustain our lives. So it's one of the elements that we have that can also be a medicine. So when we are so shut down from that trauma, we can become that water. We can become that river. We can become that water that flows through the body, releasing the pain through tears. That element of air, when we breathe and we're moving it through. We move it through the whole body, through the whole body. We might move it this way. We might move it this way. Whatever way it feels for you, whichever way your water system flows, is the way that you release it. Because a lot of trauma can be totally shut down. It can be frozen. It can be stuck, not only in your emotional state, but in your bone system, in your muscle system, in your cell system, in the brain. And it may not even be stored here. It might be stored and fragmented and fallen into the body. So we have these natural elements: air, water, land, fire, compassion. That where we can be compassionate with ourselves, to ourselves, and start moving the trauma, whether it's historical trauma. And historical trauma might be a trauma that we hold in when we start to understand the long history of colonialism in Canada, the long history of colonialism worldwide, globally. We might actually hold that in the body and it can become heavy inside. But we have that water system to flush it through, to breathe through it, to see it over there. We can be beside the history rather than being inside the history, to be in that place beside it, to get interested about the history, to get interested and curious. And then we start to come more into our own personal space and the traumas that we carry inside. But we also need to be gentle to ourselves. I was a young boy when I was placed in St. Margaret's Indian Residential School in Fort Francis, Ontario. And the first memory I have of that trauma, and when we think about the different psychological terms of memory, one of the term that I refer to is called hypermnesia. Hypermnesia is like an alarm clock that you can't shut off. It has no shut off switch. No matter what you do, it just keeps ringing and just buzzing and buzzing. It's active. Because the very first day I went into residential school as a little boy, the very first trauma I experienced was a physical beating. And I remember the person who did the beating. I remember everything about them. That's hypermnesia. I could tell you the smell of that person's breath. I could tell you the color of their clothes. I could tell you what their face, how it would discolor, how the veins would pop out. I could tell you the sound of their voice, their screaming, their high-pitched scream. I could tell you that there was a lot of fear in the room. And I come to understand today, it's not my fear and my fear alone. It's our fear, because trauma is collective. And when trauma is collective, healing also needs to be collective, because we don't have to heal individually. Because when one person heals, we start to heal collectively. It's another ripple effect. And so I seen everything, I heard everything, I smelled everything, I even tasted all of that trauma on the very first night in residential school. And that stayed with me for a very long time. I didn't know how to shut it off. I developed sleeping problems, sleeping disorders, or whatever you want to call them. But it stayed with me because I didn't know how to shut it off. For a while, when I grew up, when I got into alcohol, it shut it down for a while. But after a while, the alcohol, the drugs, didn't know how to shut it down. It was still hypermnesia. And I also had what is called amnesia, where I don't remember everything. There are holes in my memory. There are things that I can't recall because the memories are fragmented. They're distorted, they're busted up, they're everywhere. And they're not only in here, because when trauma hits a child or a human being of any age, it affects the whole brain, the right brain, the left brain, the front brain, the back brain. It does something. So the whole brain is involved. The emotions, the heart is involved. The bones, the muscles are involved. The cells are involved. So it gets into that way, so we can actually hold the trauma. So we have to be gentle and loving and caring to our bodies, to our body that holds our spirit. So I say, when I say Zongwei Benes, which is my spirit name, the name I was given before I was born, and the Zongwei Benes is my spirit that lives inside the body of Dennis Windigo, so to speak. So I need to take care of my body. I need to do what I can to keep my body healthy, to keep it functioning. I need to eat properly. I need to exercise. I need to do whatever I need to do to keep it healthy. But when I lived in that trauma, when it was still active inside of me, that was the last thing on my mind, was to live healthy. The thing that was on my mind was to survive. And to survive meant don't trust, don't talk, don't feel. And that's how I lived my life. And that's the impact on many former students. But I'm glad that I had people that I met in my circle, in my journey of life. People like the NADAP worker in my community, who is now a traditional healer, who is now someone that I work beside, who is someone I greatly respect, and someone that I learned from. And I know someone that I can also share and help him to learn what I know. So there is that sharing. And there are other people like my family, my community, that accepted me, that started to adjust to seeing who I am and not judging me for who I was in the past, and to see that person, to see who I am today. So that process of healing is a long process, and it has been a long process, and it is a long process for many, many people that have experienced residential school, many, many families who have experienced the intergenerational impacts of residential school. And so on a day like today, Truth and Reconciliation, Orange Shirt Day, every child matters. It is to remember that there are people with stories similar to mine. There are people who are very resilient, who are no longer just survivors, but they're resilient. They are today, they are healers. They are traditional healers. They are medicine healers. They are therapists. They are educators. They are social workers. And to know that a lot of their knowledge, a lot of their wisdom comes from those experiences of trauma, because when we get to that point, we can actually use and apply that trauma that once held us down, that once shut us off, that once made us angry, once that made us depressed and perhaps suicidal. And when we turn all of that around, we can be a powerful force out there. One of the teachers that I had is a very powerful woman by the name of Dark Sky. And when I was in my own place of darkness at that time, she took me under her wing. She was like this big mother eagle, this big eagle, loving and caring. And she took me under her wing. I was like a little eagle, just learning how to fly, didn't know what my wings were for, didn't understand the power that I have inside of me. But she lovingly took me under her wing and started to teach me, started to help me look inside of me, to help me look into the trauma of the things that I've been through. And no matter what I did, if I tried to lie to her, if I tried to hide things from her, she would look at me as if she could see what I was hiding inside. And then I would have to tell her, okay, yes, this is the thing I'm afraid to talk about. And she would help me work through that. So I honor her today, because we do need to honor our mentors, our teachers, those people in life that had come into our path to help us to get to where we are today. That woman's name is Josie Bear from Peguis First Nation in Manitoba. I always give honor and give thanks for everything she has taught me. And also to another teacher who had been through a lot of her own trauma, Shirley Turcott, who had also helped me in understanding who I am and the trauma that we have, that we experience, and how we can get through all of that, what the power that's within us. So I do take this time to honor these very important people, including my parents, my mother, my father, who continued to speak the Ojibwe language, the Anishinaabe language, even though I was no longer speaking it. When I went to residential school, I spoke my language. But when I came out of there, I didn't want to speak it anymore. I didn't see a value in it. And so I would speak to my parents in English. I would answer them in English. And I would, although I understood what they were saying in Anishinaabe. And so today I honor them because I understand the true teachings. My mother always told me, never forget who you are and never forget where you come from. And that teaching, at one time, it didn't have much of a meaning to me, but she was very consistent in that. And after she passed away, the meaning seemed to take on a new form, a new meaning. I went to an island. I was put on an island by an elder, and the elder told me that you're going to sit here today and you're going to listen. You're going to listen. Just listen. And to me, this is how I approach healing with people around trauma. My work around trauma has changed a lot over the years. So this elder put me on the island and he said, "You're going to sit here today and you're going to listen." But in our busy lives and our busy lifestyles, we sometimes have a hard time to settle down. We sometimes have a hard time to listen. And I was the same when I got on that island. I even climbed a tree looking for a cell signal. I was out there, way out in the bush, out on the land, out on this little island. And I thought, I'm going to miss a phone call. I'm going to miss emails. Maybe someone's trying to get a hold of me. But I remember the words of that elder. You're going to sit here and listen. And I realized I'm not listening. I'm still trying to find out everything and connect to the world in this very busy way, where it takes me away from myself. It takes me away from my inner world. It takes me away from the connection that I have with the land. And finally, I just sat there and I resigned myself to the fact I'm here for 14 more hours and I'm just supposed to listen. And so that's what I did. That's what we call a vision quest, when we sit down and we listen. We sit down, we listen, and we notice how we're sitting and what we're sitting on. And we start to notice inside of us the world that's around us. We become one with the world. We become one with all of creation. And as I sat there, it seemed like my cell phone issue faded into the background. My work and that I do out there in the world faded into the background. The things I was worried about and concerned about faded into the background. And now there was just this connection with me and all of life. And as the sound of everything came into focus, I could hear the water as I'm listening to the wind, as I'm listening to the rocks, as I'm listening to the sun as it's beating on me, as it's warming me up. And I could feel that breeze. And as that water is being moved by the wind, and that water is splashing against the shoreline, everything has a rhythm. Everything, it's like it's in sync. It becomes one. And I could feel that inside of me, becoming one, just listening. And as I'm listening inside, and a memory comes up where it's not actual a memory, it's a sense of something. It's a sense of a life that was. And that life that was that child place before residential school. And I remember getting a sense of standing by the shoreline. And as I look up towards my house, the little house that we had in the mouth of Miigwetch, where we were living prior to residential school. When I looked up there, I could get a sense my mother is standing there in this calmness. I could feel it inside my body. And I remember those words once again: never forget who you are and where you come from. And then it hit me in that vision quest, in that moment. They may have taken me out of the land, off the land, and placed me in residential school and did whatever they could to erase my language, my culture, my way of being, and my connection to land. They may have done that, but they did not remove the land out of me, because it's in me and it's inside every one of us, because we are land and we are medicine. And that's the power of who we are. as people. We are first, before we even come into this world, we are spiritually developed. Every one of us, it doesn't matter which race or what nation or where you come from on this planet, could be in a whole different country, but we were all spirit first, and then we came into a human dimension, into a human developmental process that we call human beings today. And I realized in that connection, they may have removed me from the land, but they didn't remove land from me. And I found some great power in that and connection. And so to me, healing that trauma is about connecting within oneself, connecting into yourself. And I want you to be aware of that today, and to do that today. Connect into the land where you come from. Even if you were removed from the land is not removed from you. It's inside of you. When I was a child, before going to residential school, I remember standing on the dock, and in the fall, these otters would swim through the river. And the way they swam was so beautiful, was so flowing. And it just felt so good watching them. There was a rhythm to it. And they all knew what their connection was. So they were swimming as one, even if there was about 8 of them there. That's collective. They're all moving to a certain goal, to a certain place. And I remember those experiences because that is where I come from, Miigwetch, and it's inside of me, as well as the spirit of those otters that are also my spirit helpers. And I remember this one particular time where I was moving into dissociation because I was getting abused once again in residential school. And when I went into that dissociation, I went into this place of euphoria where it's just calm, it's beautiful, and I don't feel my body being abused. And I seen and I felt the image, and I actually became an otter swimming down that river, swimming through the river, swimming collectively with other otters. And I realized the land has always been with me, because I am land and I am medicine and I am all those elements when we reach that spiritual level that's so powerfully ingrained inside of us. And then in that moment, I realized if I'm connected to the trauma, I'm making the trauma strong. I'm making the trauma more powerful than all those creator given powers inside of me. That connection to land, that connection to elements, that connection to everything that reminds me who I am and where I come from. And that's the teaching I got that day when I was out there, out on that island. And since then, my own work around trauma has changed. So when people come in for trauma therapy and they want to deal with the trauma, I ask them first not to say anything, because sometimes the trauma that we have is so deeply inside of us and it's speechless, it's paralyzed, it's shut off, it's hidden, it's in places where it's hard to connect with. So I ask people just to listen for a moment, look and listen inside the body, to get yourself to a place of calm, total calmness. And if there's a land place, what comes up? So if I say this to you, and as you're listening, I'm going to say this word 3 times. And I want you to notice, look into your place, into your body, and just listen. Listen. When you look into your body and you just listen, land, And as you're listening, what do you notice inside of you when I say that word? Land. And I say it again. When I say land, what happens inside of you? What comes through? Land. And I say it the last time, land. Is there a medicine that came through? Is there a place that came up to speak to you to say, I am here and you are home, and you are land and you are medicine? I want you to really notice that. What came up for you in that little exercise? And as you listen inside, no matter which land you come from, what country you come from, what nation you come from, we can heal collectively. And that's what we need to do as we are moving forward. We are all very powerful, because that is becoming strong. That's very powerful. Feel that inside of you. Feel how it moves you, how it resonates inside your body. Maybe it makes you want to hold your head up. Maybe you feel like dancing. Maybe you feel like standing. Maybe it makes you feel like going outside, enjoying the warmth of that sun. All of that is healing. Maybe it puts a smile on your face, and you can share that smile with other people. And you never know what that smile can do for others. There are so many steps and strategies to healing. And today, that's what I like to share. Today, that's what I like to teach. And it doesn't matter what background you have. If you have that interest to learn, to help people sit beside the trauma, to help people notice what's happening in the body, to get to that place of calmness, to move that trauma through, to get it out of the bones, to get it out of the muscles, to move to a place of total calm, just like becoming that water that's so calm, crystal clear, and feeling connected to all of life, to all of medicine. So in saying that, I say Miigwetch. Thank you for joining me today on this little journey that we have reviewed a little bit about historical trauma and contact, the first policies on Indigenous people, the formation of Canada, and the building of and implementation of residential schools, the 215 and the unmarked graves and the impacts that it had, the triggering effects it has, but also the healing that we are all capable of, and to heal and to reconcile and to work together. So I say, Miigwetch, thank you for joining me on this very sacred day.
Nyawa, Dennis, thank you so much for your words. The chat has some really beautiful things people have been sharing, and I sit here today and acknowledge my grandmother's voice. You know, as I wear my skirt for her. You know, I wear my beautiful jewelry, and you know, am here today for her. And that's what I felt when you asked us to feel and what's connected to me, and I feel her medicine in me, and this is why we're here. So Nyawa, so much for your time and words today, and just knowing that, for those of you watching, we're at the conclusion of our time together, and so we'll share with, Grandma Gail will share some closing words for us, and we have our sister to close off with this song as well. Please, continue to follow us on our grandmother's voice platform, and stay connected with the work that we're doing. We're in a beautiful time of reclamation, healing collectively, and there is no other way to do this but together. So Nyawa, and we'll see you.
Uh, as I sat and I listened to Dennis, I'm taken back, of course, to all of those beautiful teachings that he shared. And one of the strongest one, of course, is that heartbeat. I mean, that heartbeat for those who have lost their their will to live, just picking up that drum and just starting to listen to that heartbeat, just starting to play that drum. I've seen it do miracles with so many people, because there's something about the magic of that drum, and it doesn't matter whether you're from big drum or water drum or hand drum or any kind of drum, didgeridoo, whatever they call those drums. It's that heartbeat. And if you've ever been fortunate enough to sit on the um, transcontinental shelf or whatever they call it, you can sometimes hear that drum beat of our mother, and it is so low and it is so slow, but there's this vibration that you can't ever forget. And you know that Earth Mother is alive, and you know that because Earth Mother is alive, we are alive. And so we always have to do that best to understand that we're not disconnected from Mother Earth. We're not disconnected from anything. We're part of something that is beautiful, and it's just for us. It's just up to us to remember that we are here, and sometimes we have to look for that beauty, and that beauty is very powerful within us. And it's that heartbeat, it's that light, it's that wanting to, I guess, connect. So in our state of disconnection, um, know that there's many things that are available, as far as healing goes. Tonight we honor full moon, and tonight you put your arms up towards grandmother, and you ask her to bless you. You ask her to, be part of you. You ask her to share her energy with you. And as you do so, there's miracles that happen. All of a sudden, you feel calm. And sometimes we don't always understand how closely we are connected to everything, but it's as every day we can look up at grandma and she's there. Whether there's clouds, whether there's not clouds, every day she's there and she's doing her duty, and she's saying, look at, you have everything that you need to heal. So once you start to acknowledge and start to understand that healing is going to happen from birth to death, and it's a beautiful thing. The more you get into your healing, the more your spiritual power becomes stronger, the more your heart beats stronger as well. So with that, Dennis, again, every time I listen to you, I always pick up something, you know, extra or something deeper, and I'm just so glad that you're, part of Grandmother's Voice, and that that you have come to share, because you have such a beautiful way of, doing that. Um, so when we close, of course, we want to always acknowledge that, it's through our ancestors that this was possible. And so we can just say Nyawa or thank you, and our ancestors will depart and they will go do their work in the spirit world. And it's just that simple. Sometimes we like to put a lot of words and a lot of energy into things, but it's as simple as Nyawa. And so we are free to enjoy um, that energy that we're still in, after being here for this length of time. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jen for her closing song.
Hi, we have Josie too. That's joined us to share. Yeah.
I'll sing Wildflower to honor the children that didn't make it home and for the adult children that did make it home. Hey, 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 Love you, Dennis. Love you, everybody.
Yes.
Love you, Josie.
Bye now.
Nyawa.
Yo.
Bye.